Hello and welcome to the AI Digest podcast. My name is Joaquin Melara. I am your host, and with me today is Helene Smuts.
There you go.
Hi. Helene is the CEO of Credo Growth, and she is based out of Cape Town, South Africa. It's the beginning of my day, but it's the end of hers. Helene, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for making the sacrifice to come in. It's the end of your day. I know you want to relax and unwind. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me. And yeah, you know how it is with entrepreneurs. It's the end of the day. It doesn't mean that it's the end of our work day. So, but it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Joaquin.
It's a pleasure, and it's a second shift, right?
It's a what?
It's a second shift of your day,
Yes.
basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then when that shift ends, then the kids start. So never ending. Yeah.
So, Helene, you are an accomplished entrepreneur, a facilitator, a speaker, and the author of the book Ditch Mediocrity. You have a background in industrial psychology, and you have a cultivated track record of success in the development of culture and productivity in tech and manufacturing organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about what all this means and sort of what's led you down this path?
Yeah. I think in a nutshell, it really is about we are a consultancy that helps companies cultivate high performing, high functioning cultures, leaders, and teams. Um, and of course, we use the background, and I use the background of industrial psychology and other different methodologies in order to help companies to achieve that. I think there's so many um, teams and individuals in businesses that sometimes show up in an organization and sit there and wait to see what can the organization do for them. And we come in from the angle that it's a two-way street. It's, yeah, leaders and organizations need to create a space for people, but team members also need to show up and do a few things for themselves in order to be engaged and motivated. So we really come in from that angle is how do we create a two-way street culture so that it's high performing and high functioning. Yeah, and I started doing this about 16 years ago, I think it is. So absolutely loving it and running through my veins, and yeah, it's always a diverse kind of role because you don't know what you're going to get with different clients and different industries.
What I find refreshing about your perspective is that though you may not be involved in the implementation aspects of AI initiatives, since you are engaged with international organizations, you're able to see firsthand the impact of what AI is doing to the culture, to the psychology, and to the state of mind overall of employees and leaders. So,
Yeah,
is there
absolutely.
anything you could tell me about some of the firsthand accounts that you've been encountering?
Yeah. I think, I mean, you and I spoke about it once before, but a big thing is that some people are very excited about AI and about bringing in different types of technologies in the organization, and they almost become your ambassadors that are promoting using these technologies in businesses. But then we also have the impact of it of leaders not being able to lead the change well enough for people who are worried about it. um, I mean, everyone knows that there's a big group of people that believe that AI is going to take their jobs. And that is not being dealt well with in organizations. But we also see the beautiful side in terms of the increase in productivity and the efficiency, especially in manufacturing. It's nuts. Um, but and then people tend to focus only on the positive employees instead of on those who are struggling to deal with a change. That's kind of the two main things that we can see creates quite a bit of a drift between groups and organizations. Yeah.
I appreciate you talking about the spectrum of uh, change or reactions to change in an organization. There's always going to be people that embrace change and are excited and energized by it, and people that are going to fear and loathe it.
Yeah.
Um, so let's Can we just take a moment to kind of lay the perimeter of the conversation? I'm going to make some silly assumptions, and feel free to correct me with your knowledge and experience. Don't people want to be in unproductive organizations? Don't people want to accomplish less in the day? Don't people want to be in a toxic environment where they miscommunicate and work against each other? Is that not the objective of the corporate environment?
You would think, but I think people spend so much time at work that they really want to enjoy work. They want to be efficient. They want to know that they are doing well at their job. We always say, and Patrick Lencioni, American consultant and management consultant that I love to follow him. But he speaks about three things that team members and employees want. And the one is they want to be known by their manager. And the second is they want to know that what they do is relevant. And the third is measurement, is they want to know when are they doing a good job and how do they know that they are successful. And I think so many leaders have taken that for granted, to think that people come to the office and they are naturally intrinsically motivated, instead of thinking like, I need to also as a leader create areas for my people to be motivated. So people don't have that ill intent naturally. You might have a handful of people, to you say that don't people want toxic environments and things like that. It's a handful of people that come with ill intent, and we deal with them on a very different way, and they need to be dealt with. But for the rest of the people, they might resist change, but it's because they don't understand it. So it doesn't mean that those that don't like the change are the toxic ones. They're just not being led through the change really well. I don't know if that answers kind of your hypothesis that you made.
I put a deliberate contrarian view because I knew you would absolutely blow it out of the water. And I would like to believe personally, this is my opinion, that people want to be positive agents of change, and they want to be making impacts in their world, and they want to be praised for the results of their actions. Everybody
Yeah,
wants to be a virtuous person. Um, but like you said, sometimes it's a matter of perspective, of maybe it's miscommunication or misalignment of expectations.
mm,
Um, but you are the expert here. Bosses don't want to kind of spoon feed the employees and people in their organization on what to do and how to do it. They also don't have a crystal ball that tells them exactly where to go and what to do.
yeah,
And people that are at an organizational level, they want the autonomy to work, but sometimes they don't feel like they have the trust or latitude to do things on their own.
yeah,
So, how do you help both kind of find a happy path and a balance
mm,
in all those accounts?
yeah. So it's interesting, and I mean, you can speak about this under the banner of AI and how technology is impacting it, and then you can speak about it just in terms of normal culture without even touching the technology side. And I think the first thing that we do is we actually focus on the foundation of trust within organizations. Again, people come with the perception that everyone else comes from ill intent, but I come from good intent.
Mm,
And that is leaders and what we call followers alike. So the way that we work is we work with the leadership and the management of the organization, but at the same time we also work with the people in the organization so that they can learn how to be amazing followers. And I always say increase your batting lineup for your leadership. And that is by focusing on the followers in the organization so that they can understand why the leaders do what they do. They can understand why is it that we need to go through this change and not resist it as much. But then at the same time, the leadership needs to go and say, hey, I might be a leader, but I need to learn how to lead well. So that's kind of the focus area of both. So that the one is just not so, like to your point where you said leaders don't want to spoon feed. No, they don't want to spoon feed. But if they don't guide and do
mm,
their role clearing objectives away and dealing with concerns, they end up spoon feeding. So you can almost see it as a parent-child conversation and relationship. If the leader is going to stay the parent, of course he's going to get a child response. So it's about getting people to level up in the adults so that they can actually support one another.
I appreciate you bringing that element of trust being the catalyst for evolving those parent-child relationships into more equal relationships. We're both individuals. We both have the capacity to think and feel and act and learn. How do we build that trust so that someone who is a leader or responsible for the organization and ownership and administration, that they can empower somebody else as an individual with some latitude? You can't give everything to everybody all at once, but how do you create a mini leader?
Yeah. So there's quite a few different ways that we do that. The first one is we obviously look at things like you trust who you know well, right? So therefore, we create spaces where people do personality profiling and they share and they debrief the profiles and they really get to know one another. There's a very specific activity that I do whenever I go to the States. They love it, with a manufacturing business. And they do that cross-departmental throughout the organization so that people can get to know the person beyond the operational scope of work. That's the first foundation. Otherwise, you only see the person in terms of work persona and you don't really know who they are. The moment you know who they are, that's where the belief of good intent starts settling in. Then we do different things like team developments, where we unpack what's working, what's not working, why is it not working, and we facilitate these discussions. But we teach the leaders, and if I say teach, we support the leaders and the people in the teams and business to have these conversations without us in the room. But it's so bizarre now that I think about it. It's almost as if people want to hear from an outsider. They want to get the permission before leaning into tough conversations. But yeah, that's kind of the foundation of how we start working. But it's very much working with teams, going through change, implementing new ideas, needing to make big decisions, and from that foundation of trust, and then helping them moving through the process.
So first, you socialize people to people within an organization to build empathy, and empathy breeds trust because you could see yourself having a relationship with these people outside of work, whether they're a friend or a neighbor or a colleague. I mean, just that element of socialization is an important foundation for developing that
Yeah.
trust.
I think,
Because now they're human. They're not just Bill from
yeah.
accounting. Now it's Bill has a wife and kids and hobbies and aspirations and fears. So now it's Bill's a person.
Yeah. And what I always say is, you don't have to always make friends with every single person in the organization. That's not the aim. Um,
Mm.
but you have to have enough good intent and compassion to know that you are working with this person and you have an obligation to learn to get to know that person. You don't have to share your deepest, darkest secrets, all of
Right.
those things, but share enough about yourself so that the other person can learn who you are, what you are like, because then it's almost like a puzzle piece fits together. And again, that is where people go, wow, I can have a tough conversation because I know Joaquin is not going to see it as me trying to step on his toes. Joaquin's going to see it as me just wanting the best for the team or the department or for you.
Yeah, that's true. When people are isolated, they're more likely to see each other as adversaries rather than colleagues.
Exactly.
Um, Whenever I engage in a difficult conversation myself, even if it's an initial interaction, I had one yesterday, actually. I very clearly laid out my boundaries of what I can do and I cannot do, what I will do and will not do, based on my capacity and professional experience. And it's not a this is my road or no road. It was a dialogue to set expectations because that is the responsible and professional thing to do.
Yeah.
And initially it was like, you're not going to hold me hostage in this decision. I said, this is not a hostage situation. I'm just letting you
Mm.
know what you can rely on me for. And then based
Yeah.
on that, we can make a decision together, and we can negotiate the terms and conditions of that relationship. Um, and once that perspective was brought, that I want to help and I want to be reliable and we can do things together, that's when the perspective shifted, that now we're looking at problems rather than fighting against each other.
Yeah. I think that's also a big thing that we work with organizations is how can people rather add to the pool, add meaning to the pool. Like if you think each team, each organization has a whole pool of information, and if we have these tough dialogues and we share different opinions and we disagree and we say why, not to win the argument, but to rather add information to the team, we increase the team's intellect, and then better decisions can be made. Same with if you look at data, and if you look at kind of like if you analyze certain things, you can make better decisions. It's the same with having these kind of cultures where people can show up, stand up, speak their mind with respect, of course. But it really increases the intellect of the team or the organization.
When you initially painted that picture of how you work with organizations, the first element that we just discussed was the socialization to build trust. Now, the pragmatic aspect of that, once trust is established, is that you empowered the leaders to be able to discuss the procedures in the organization so that people can see how they add value to the process and how they can improve it collectively. As you're saying, everybody has different strengths, experiences, knowledge, and they work in different aspects of this process. An organization is nothing more than one big process, right? We're converting raw ingredients or materials, whether it's knowledge or physical goods, into finished products and services that can be exchanged for money. The
Mm.
people that convert it use tools or they use proprietary knowledge, but at the end of the day, it's a group of people working together to accomplish a task continuously for profit, right? Or for
Yeah. And
sustainable
yeah.
financial. Yeah. Um, so how does that work? How do you illustrate a process, and how do you say, hey, you're all part of this house, you're all part of this process, let's talk constructively about what we can do collectively to make it
Mm.
better, not blame. How do we shift that perspective to we're a unit and we're responsible?
Yeah. It's interesting because that's almost where you have to take a facilitative approach, and leaders can do that with their own teams. We just so happen to know exactly how to run the process, but it's it's as simple as us getting the team together or the organization or the exco team together and creating a whole bunch. I mean, my office is full of flip charts as I'm looking around here now, is saying to people, okay, what do you understand the value chain to be, and or what do you understand in terms of what's working well, what's not working well, where we can do things better. If it's a process that needs to be unpacked, is to almost get different groups to identify what does that process look like, and then you bring it up and you say, can you now see why there's so much kind of dysfunction in a team because all of you see the process going in different or in a different order. So it's a facilitated conversation, but you have set up the session in such a way that people feel calm and they have enough guts to, because there's enough trust, they have that guts to share what's wrong and what they are frustrated with, instead of just sitting there quietly and keeping their own ideas to themselves.
So you're illustrating that people usually have fragmented views of the organization. Everybody has a localized view of their job and what they're responsible for and what goes right, what goes wrong as part of their actions and the actions of their peers or people adjacent to it or how the company's doing. Um, Now, you said something really interesting to me. You said sometimes it takes an outside party, a facilitator, to create an environment where people have the feeling, they have the permission to speak freely. Why
Mm.
is it that it takes a catalyst to create that environment?
I think sometimes what we have seen, it's just pure legacy. So it was one leader took over a team, and the previous leader was like a dictator or very autocratic. And people still sit with that fear of when they speak up, they will get reprimanded or they will be ridiculed. So that's the one angle as to why that happens, why they need someone in the room. And again, that means we have to go back to the new leader and the team getting to know one another really well, so that the team can see this new leader has a different style. Another part is it might just be the company culture, and that's what we are trying very much to work to get help leaders and executives to get rid of that culture, um, because it comes from the top. So the CEO of the organization might not be one that's very open to different ideas and different opinions. And even in an organization of 500 people, it still filters down all the way through to the bottom, to your entry level. So it's very important that if you are bringing in that culture of we are having passionate debates and we are going to challenge the status quo and we are going to share ideas and opinions, you need to get it from someone else who doesn't have an agenda connected to the CEO or agenda that's connected to the team members. It really is that neutrality of I'm holding the space so that we can get this team to high performance and high functioning, and that includes those tough conversations and holding each other accountable. The ability to say, hey buddy, you didn't do this, come on, I'm waiting on you, without the other person getting offended.
So we've outlined that first, the first aspect of all this exercise is to socialize people as humans. Then it's to create an environment where they feel they have the permission to be expressive and illustrate their fragmented perspective of the holistic reality of the real situation. Now you're saying that sometimes it doesn't happen because there may be legacy leaders who are not permissive of having an open dialogue, or they don't want the criticism, or they don't want to hear from people that are not at a executive level have an idea or share their thought. And even on the perspective of the followers, some of them are thinking, hey, this isn't my organization, this is not my responsibility, it's not my job. If I say something, they're going to fire me.
Yeah.
So, how do you create? I just want to wrap this up. How do you create guardrails? So, even if you come in, you don't come in like a bull in a china shop and get everybody to talk and spill the beans, and then once everything's kind of been put on the table, and all the ugly mummies or skeletons in the closet come out, um, people don't get fired, or the leader doesn't implode. How do you create that guardrail?
So I think people think that wanting to change a team dynamic or wanting to change a culture of an organization, small or big, is a quick fix. It's not. And the way that we work with our clients is, yes, we have a team development, but then it's followed, depending on the series and what exactly needs to be achieved. But there's also an element of skill development. People don't know how to have tough conversations. They don't even know how to construct their sentence. And
Mm.
it's not because they are in the wrong, it's they've never been taught. People don't understand. They don't know how to give feedback, and they don't know how to listen to feedback. So in order to kind of create sustainability in the team where people are willing to trust, willing to lean in, willing to have these passionate dialogues, you need to equip them with a skill in order to know how to do it. Same as what leaders need to be equipped with a skill around how to guide these conversations and how to handle feedback and how to be open to the challenge of the status quo. So there's a lot of skills development that goes with this whole journey. It's not just we come in and we facilitate and now all of a sudden, okay, the team has shared all their stuff that they're complaining about, and then we
Bye.
go. There are companies that do that, but we don't for that specific reason. So it's walking a journey,
Right.
like the one manufacturing business in the US that we're working with. I've been working with them since 2009, in South Africa since 2009, and in the US since 2020. And it's a continuous evolving process because there's so many new people and the culture is evolving because of AI and robotics and all of those things that's coming in. So it's not you can have a once-off thing if there's a crisis in a team, of course. But if you want sustainable high performance, that means you walk a journey with the people in your organization to really develop them, so that new knowledge becomes actual change behavior.
I hope you don't mind if we go slightly deeper into this.
That's fine. I'm loving this topic. So
I want to go dive into the deep end of the pool. So we've illustrated in an organization the work that you do, what you do, how you do, why you do. Now, I want to look at the perspective of an individual and the approach of managing change with individuals and with organizations.
yeah.
But I want to explore this with you through the perspective of reality, because we have belief systems, we have perception, we have thoughts, but sitting in the back of our heads or inside of our cranium or in some part of our brain, we have encoded belief systems, and that informs how we view the world, and that shapes the way that we engage with others, whether we're trusting with them or not trusting with them, whether we're positive or critical. um, who knows where these belief systems come from? They can come from upbringing, education, nurturing, professional experience, etc.
Yeah. So
So how do you take the belief systems of an individual, and how do you take a change management methodology and support the culture change, especially when there's so much outside technology changing? AI, every day of the week, you're going to hear an announcement about AI or something that pretends to be AI, because that's what's selling on the market right now. So
yeah,
how do you help people with that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is change is very often hard to accept because you weren't consulted. Now, I'm not promoting management by consensus. Absolutely not. That just slows the process down.
Mm-hmm.
But what we see happen a lot is that exco makes certain decisions of a process or bringing in a new technology that's a few levels removed from where they are. But the people that have to work with that process and that new technology has not been consulted in terms of what do you think will work well? What are you struggling with? What are you not struggling with? It's just because, and we've got one company that we work with where the founder he just wants the new tech every single time. But eventually the people are going like, we don't need that new tech. It's actually disrupting our processes at the moment. So I think that's the first thing, is when people feel that they had the ability to weigh in, they had the ability to share their ideas, share their thoughts. Generally, they will still go, but whatever decision you choose or whatever route you go, I think the Americans, you call it route, whatever route you go, that we will support you. But at least they asked for our input. So it really is about, especially if you bring in different, like I said, different AI and different tools and things, is work the plan with the people so that they can give you the input in order to make better decisions. So that was the one thing in terms of how do you change beliefs around people. Otherwise, it's they're just doing it for the sake of making more money. They're just doing it because it's cool for them, and they're not really taking care of us. I think another thing is sometimes we think it's someone's belief system why they're resisting change, but it's actually a fear of loss. Or and let me first explain that, because I can go down a rabbit hole here. But it might be a fear of loss of, okay, I used to be the person that walks up and down the shelves to find all the different products that needs to go to the shipping department. Now all of a sudden we've got what they call vertical storage mobile systems. Now all of a sudden I'm not going to be the one walking around in the trolley anymore and seeing all the people in the manufacturing floor. I'm literally going to stand by a machine and pressing in what I need, and the product comes to me. Just that role change, the effect that the matter that I'm not going to see my buddies on a daily basis, can move to resistance to change. But we don't think about those things. So if we can explain to the person how that change is going to positively affect their productivity, their efficiency, which means they can still go and have those chats. It's just now it's not going to be while he's pushing a trolley. People need to hear those things, but we forget about that. We just think everyone's going to see how it's going to be impactful and productive and efficient. So there's quite a few different things that can happen. Sorry, I'm going on a rant now, but one last thing that can also happen is, say, for example, there is an automated process that is replacing one person's job. Joaquin, if it's your job and I am friends with you, I might be excited about that change. But now I'm your friend, so now all of a sudden my loyalty is towards you. So now I'm going to resist the change just because of my loyalty. So there's many different variables as to why people's beliefs come up when it comes to resistance to change. I hope that answered your question. It's a little bit more complicated than just changing the beliefs. It's really understanding why the resistance is there.
Mm. Well, I think no, you outlined a few very important elements, and I think that gives me food for thought, and other topics to explore here in this conversation. You want to contextualize the reason for the change. You want to understand the external, internal motivators for change, and in the opposite end of that, what is pulling against the acceptance of change, whether it's an external benefit that is being lost, like the loss of or the changing of a job is like having somebody in your life die. I mean, part of you is dying. You have to reconstruct that, and people have, God knows how long they've been doing that job the way that it's being done, and all of a sudden it evaporates. What do you do?
Yeah. It's interesting. We had a scenario also in one of the manufacturing firms that we work with, a welder who I mean used to work with his hands, right? It's a very active kind of role, and a cobot came in to start doing some of the I don't know the technical terms, but like start doing some of the welding, I guess. And he had a complete loss of identity, because he was like, this is what I do. So what they did now is they have part of the operation is with cobots, and the other parts is where, because he's an amazing welder, where he is still part of that and really being able to use his hands while overseeing the new technology of the cobots as well. So it's important to look at the human element, so for example, that the cobots don't replace us, but rather support us in how to make things more productive and effective, because that was a complete loss. It's like there's a part of me that doesn't exist anymore, and I think people forget about that.
That sense of identity is something that is not discussed enough in society, not in school, not in church, not in not anywhere. No, I mean, we have these the concept of the self-image. If I were to describe Joaquin as a third party, here are his attributes. Here's what he does. Here's what he's good at, what he's not good at. But not everybody consciously understands that they have a perception of themselves that they can describe as a third party. And if you don't have a basis of the concept of self or an identity, it's understandable that it's if part of that were to be gone, you are experiencing grief. How do you
Yeah.
help facilitate that, the concept of identity, and help people shift their beliefs throughout this change management process?
Mm. Sure, that's a tough one. Again, because each person has such a very different way of how they perceive themselves and how much they attach to their role and why they are attached to their role. I think it's, again, the first thing is to understand what is the cost of if we don't bring in change, and what will that cost, how that cost is going to impact you. So that there's context to what is busy happening. And then it is about asking questions like, in your gut, I'm just kind of working through a process now in terms of, in your gut, what are you most afraid of, and why? What is the worst thing that you think can happen, and what about this can be good for you? And then looking at, okay, now that you know that you've got a new role which is focused on overseeing a cobot, plus you are still being able to use your hands and work with precision and kind of professionalism that you really enjoy, or perfectionism rather, that you really enjoy. How can, if this was the only way that there is, how can you make it work? So it's not about so much giving instructions. It's almost going into coaching methodology and asking someone and asking this person a whole bunch of questions so that they can process what is actually going on for them. And that is, and again, that's the beauty of coaching, because people are then able to unpack the fears and the things that they are worried about. And that is when the leader can speak to those fears and concerns and say, okay, well, how can we make this work? What are you willing to try? Because people sometimes are willing to try, they're just too scared to even remotely move in that direction. But yeah, I would really go into a coaching mode, to support someone with that, because there's many different reasons as to why that is happening for them.
Now, you are what is known as a consultant. So you advise people on what to do and how to do it. People say coach and consultant. These are two very similar words, or they sound similar, but in practice, they're polar opposites. Can you
Hmm.
illustrate an example where you come in as a consultant and illustrate an example where you come in as a coach?
As a coach, so I use the skill of consulting and coaching interchangeably. So I'm able to, in one session, move into put my consulting hat on, and then go, hold on, this is not a consulting hat anymore. Now I'm moving into a coaching process. And that's, I think, why it's so much fun for me. But I think if you think in terms of change, team development, team dynamics, conflict, culture, all of those things, that's where I have a consulting hat on, because I know what processes work well, but where I use the methodology of coaching inside of my consulting is that I am not the expert in your business. You are the expert in your business. So I can consult on a guided process to make sure that we roll out a culture of feedback, or we roll out a culture of high performance, whatever the case might be. I know the different tools and methodologies to use, but what is inside of that still comes from you as the organization, because you are the expert in what it is that you do. And that's where the coaching comes in. It's really about asking a lot of questions, because the coaching mindset is not giving advice at all, contrary to popular belief. But it's, in fact, I just did a whole coaching course for entrepreneurs in Atlanta around how do you actually lead with a coaching tool. And it's not about your advice and your experience and what you think is good to do. And I think that's why Credo is probably so much liked, and why clients don't leave us, is because we don't only use consulting. We come in as a coach, consultant, partner, you're still the expert in your business. We just help you with the process design around it. Because you're right, it's two very different things.
So would you say, and I'm trying to wrestle with this in my mind as well, would you say that coaching, well, first, yeah, would you say that coaching is a dialogue with permission to act? Um, yeah.
What do you mean with permission to act, if I can ask that?
You said earlier that sometimes people feel that they need a permission to do
Mm,
this or to do that. They need a facilitator to help them take a
yeah,
certain action because they don't know, am I supposed to? Am I not supposed to? Are there
yeah,
repercussions? Are there
yeah,
benefits? So you sort of say, if we want this to happen, you need to say these things. And then within
mm,
those things being said, the things that you think you need to act on, we need to prioritize. So
yeah.
that's what I mean.
So the coaching actually takes people through a bit of a journey. It's really to understand what do you want to achieve, and this can be on a one-on-one. This can be in team coaching. It can be me with an executive person who wants to roll out culture within the business. But you first understand what is it that the person wants to achieve. Then you start unpacking. This is where the amazing questions come in. Then you help the person process their own thoughts and their own ideas through questions. And once you've done that, then you start looking at, okay, so what are all the different alternatives available to you based on what it is that you want to achieve or based on the challenge that we are discussing? And then do you say, okay, now that you've mentioned all of these alternatives, which one are you going to go for? And of course, there's many different questions that you can ask in each one. But so that's kind of the journey that you take someone through. So coaching is really the ability for the person to unpack, where the permission almost comes in, where you facilitate and you hold the space in a room where people feel safe enough in order to now say, okay, I never wanted to say this in the past, but I'm now comfortable enough into saying that I'm struggling, or I made mistakes, or I am not appreciating the way that you are running our meetings. And that's what the facilitated sessions do. It creates a safe space so that coaching and consulting and tough conversations and dialogue can happen.
That makes it clear. Okay, so now we've talked about culture, we've talked about organizations, we've talked about the basis of an organization being people. People need to have socialization. Socialization then leads to being able to look at the fragmented view of a process and kind of integrating that into one harmonious view. You give people the permission and the space to express themselves. You coach them in a manner that they can expel and outline the things that they feel need to be done or how they need to be done. And then you help them gain the courage to select the thing. So you act as a catalyst of change. And you've contextualized this change, and you've explained why it's good, and you've explained why it needs to be done, and what are the repercussions if it doesn't happen. Now, because this is the AI Digest, let's weave in the aspect of technology. AI is
Yeah,
just one representation of technology. It could be anything, robotics, it could be buying a power tool, but let's just say for all intents and purposes, we're going to talk about AI. Um, Usually it's a process and then tools, but people always come first: people, process, and tools.
mm,
Tools may radically change the process in itself. It's a dialogue between process and tools for people.
yeah.
How do you navigate that when you have leaders that are overly ambitious or they have shiny object syndrome? How do you help to ease that transition into a new process and the adoption of a new tool?
Yeah. That comes down again to a bit of a change management journey. Um, it really is about mapping out kind of why are we doing this for people, kind of what is the output going to be, what is the outcome going to be, what's going to be the consequence of not implementing this process, or not going for this new technology. It's important for people to understand what will be achieved with it and what's going to happen if it doesn't happen. So that would be the first thing. And then again, collecting some concerns and questions that people have so that they feel that they are being heard. But you also then respond to those concerns and those questions. Because it's not just about being heard, but it's also then giving the feedback back to the people from those questions and concerns that they have. And based on that, you might have heard something that you didn't think of, but it's then, and if you have that culture of trust, that is then where the implementation goes. And you know what? I know this is probably going to be a difficult time, and some people are going to really struggle with it, and that is okay. So it's also about giving the permission that it's okay to play with this new tool and have fun with this new tool and make mistakes with it so that we can learn from implementing this. Again, it depends a little bit around what are you rolling out, what technology, what type of AI, how often do you change the process? But it's if you can follow kind of that journey and have an environment where it's okay for people to not be nervous in using it, and that they can rather learn from a mistake that they make and share that mistake and share that learning, that becomes so much more enjoyable for people to actually lean into the idea of using it.
I have to sit on that for a second. So it all boils down to managing change within the human element at an individual level. I mean, yeah, you can group it at an organizational level, but everybody needs to be in alignment with a change, why it's happening, and how to gradually make the change reasonable so that it doesn't disrupt business continuity and rip up people and create churn. Um,
I think there's one of our clients, his name is Ron Foltz. He's one of the directors in manufacturing in the US with the business. And he always says, how can people see that new technology and new AI and new kind of AI systems and algorithms and all of those things, how can we make sure that they believe and see how technology is helping us stepping away from doing the dirty, dull, dangerous, and kind of dark work?
yeah.
So it's if you can see how technology can support you, that you don't have to do those kind of things anymore. I mean, and you go through a change journey, you're really setting people up for success. And if they still resist, are they still right for your organization? Are they that's also a question to ask. If you really, as a leader, have put things in place and you know that you have implemented things in order for people to understand, share their ideas, and they still resist, then sometimes it's okay if they go. I'm not saying you should fire them, by no means. But I know sometimes people leave in a certain part of the change journey. And that's okay then, because they choose not to, and that's their right. But it really is about helping in the human space. How can we set it up really well for people so that they can see the beauty of it and not just be worried and concerned about it?
Here's the follow-up question that I had before I got stuck in that and kind of simmering in that idea or that sequence of thoughts that you shared with me. How do you benchmark this? Because at the end of the day, you are enabling an organization to deal with intangibles, to deal with feelings and culture and things that you can measure on a spreadsheet. How do you benchmark this and tie this performance to an ROI? Because I see the value in this. Changing the DNA of an organization improves its resilience. I know everybody says resilience, grit. What are other hot buzzwords that are?
Endurance.
There's all these meaningless words that don't really communicate how profound it means to change all these elements and tie them together into one neat, I don't know, sweater or scarf.
Yeah.
You're knitting all these elements from wiry, chaotic sources into one homogeneous path. How do you measure the ROI on that? How do you benchmark it?
Yeah, the measurement of the work that we do is always a tricky thing to explain because it's not instant. Um,
Mm,
the work that we do, you see the benefits of that maybe 6 months, a year later, but you see the energy of what we do in the business almost instantaneously because
mm,
people show up different at the office. But if you think about it, when they show up differently at the office and they're more engaged, all of a sudden absenteeism starts to go down,
mm.
toxicity starts to go down. What we've done, I keep on saying in the US just because everyone, you mentioned that I'm in South Africa, but we do a lot of work in the US, and we've rolled out over a period of 18 months. We've rolled out in a manufacturing business feedback of culture, a culture of feedback, and I was just there for a month now, and it was a year ago that we started this journey. And about probably about 60% of the management team came to me to say that, you know what, since we've rolled this out throughout the whole organization, and they're in many different states, I all of a sudden don't deal with petty conversations anymore. I now deal with things where people are really stuck with decision making. Where in the past, what he was doing, what the managers were doing with was dealing with people complaining to the manager about the other person not doing their job. They don't do that anymore because the people go to one another and they go, I have more free time to actually do my job. So that's very difficult to put that in a bottom line. But it goes back to productivity, which is kind of how we almost started this conversation.
Helene, we're drawing near the end of the conversation, and we've explored a spectrum of topics. They all fall in the same bucket of culture within an organization. Technology is but an enabler.
Yeah.
What piece of advice or what simplified methodology can you share with somebody who feels like the world is on their shoulders? I mean, small enterprise, so like, very small teams or small organizations, they're resource constrained. They feel like they need to be competing with medium and large enterprises. They're working and fighting day in, day out, and they feel a sense of dread and hopelessness. They want to have the best foot forward, but they're tainted by, all these surmountable elements. Um,
Yeah.
how can you help them transition into a positive, constructive, and productive environment?
Yeah. Sure. There's many answers to that. I think the one answer is, if you are someone that likes to implement things yourself as a leader, I always follow, like, unashamedly, the process of the five dysfunctions of a team by Patrick Lencioni. It is such a beautiful, practical model to implement as a leader, but you must be willing to actually execute on. You must become your team facilitator or your company facilitator. But that is a beautiful model to use if you want to do it yourself. And I would highly recommend that people who are really wanting to make a shift, that they follow that journey. The other thing that I can recommend that is also almost like self implementation, self study, is the book that I wrote. I've got it here
Ditch me.
somewhere. This one. Let me just. So it's 12 chapters and it's nice and thin if you think about it. And it's just 12 tools of what you as a leader can do in order to lead a team through better performance.
Hmm.
Very practical. Some of my favorite tools to use as a leader. So that's another journey that you can go on. And then, of course, I mean, I, of course, I want to say, if you really want to make a transition and you want to help people and your leaders, and even if you're a small business, we really can help with that. I've got a facilitator in the US who's amazing at it. I'm there quite often. And whether you use Credo Growth or another amazing culture consultancy, is spend the energy and the resources to get someone to hold that space for you if you are not a natural facilitator. It is so amazing to get the feedback from these managers to go, I don't deal with crap anymore. Or my team has stepped up and they now make decisions, even though they sometimes make mistakes. They own it. My team is giving each other feedback. People are willing to try out the cobots that works for them and things like that. It really is very special to see. But you either need to take a stance as a leader and say, you're going to do it and implement it and run that process, or get someone like what we, for example, do, to come and do that for you, not to tell you what to do, but to facilitate the journey with you, with the team. I think that's very important.
That's good. That's good advice. What would you say is the importance of, and this is the last question, absolute last question. I won't bother you any further. You want to get some rest and start dinner or whatever it is that you're going to do.
Maybe a glass of wine first and then dinner.
What is the importance of trust in the organization?
We need a whole nother podcast just on trust. I can tell you that. So trust for me, there's operational trust in terms of, I trust you well enough to predict your behavior. I trust you well enough that you can execute on your role. And then but what Patrick Lencioni also speaks about is vulnerability-based trust. You need both, but you need to start with vulnerability-based trust. And what that looks like in an organization is if the leader and the founder or the CEO of the organization can go, I don't know, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, that was not my intention. I need help. Or, wow, you do it better than me. And I need you to show me how to do that because I really don't know. So that kind of foundation of trust is so important if we want people to step into the new space of technology, and if we need them to start playing with the new technology and use it, they need to know that it's okay if I make a mistake and I don't need to hide my mistake. Again, you only have vulnerability-based trust if you get to know the people that you work with. And then there's other elements of trust, of course, around credibility, reliability, and all of those things. That's a whole different conversation. But it's the foundation of organizational success is that vulnerability-based trust, 100%.
Helene, I'm glad we had this conversation, and I hope people listening into this really take it home that AI is but an enabler. AI is but a tool, but it does not exist in the absence of people and process. So we can't really have a good process without trust.
No, 100%. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really had a blast chatting to you. It was awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.